Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Surviving. I'm Verity, and I'm very, very grateful that you're here with us again. We're talking about something that doesn't necessarily get covered in the Survival 101 basics, and that is the emotional toll of survival. We talk about the physical recovery, we never talk about how life changes and the emotional toll it has on you as a person, as a human being, and it has on people around you. We might not talk about the people around you today because that is a whole nother ballgame. Let's dive right in. Surviving sepsis and then facing a type 1 diabetes diagnosis afterwards was physically hard. Emotionally felt impossible. The fear and the constant anxieties, the constant worries, completely life-shattering and overwhelming. After you leave the hospital, you think you'll be fine and no one tells you any different. And then when you come home, you realise you're in fact not fine. And you don't quite expect the weight of the trauma to relay into your everyday life, into who you are, or who you are now, not who you were, because you're a very different person. What I didn't expect was the weight of that trauma and the constant questions to literally follow me everywhere. To follow me when I went for coffee or when I went to bed. I didn't think they would sit there when I'd be watching a TV show. Not talking about the physical stages of recovery, I am talking about the emotional stages. Everyone could see the physical recovery, everyone could see the bruises and the scars. No one could see that my mind, my body, my feelings, my world had changed, and a lot of people didn't get it. They didn't understand. I am talking about the fear and the terror and the what happens if I'm unwell again? Will I finally be broken? It's something that no one warns you about and no one discusses until you meet your community. And with that, we are going to lean into two people who hold a very big place in my heart. Nat and Josh, they taught me to find a way through it rather than climbing over it. To me, find a way forwards. Being intensive care was supposed to be a victory, but it wasn't. Everyone says, oh my god, well done, welcome to the ward, welcome to the healthy place. And actually it's the scariest thing I ever did, because you go from being on a tightrope to having so much leeway that no one really understands that leeway. It was a world that I didn't know how to navigate, and I felt so incredibly lost and so alone, and I never cried so much. I thought I would just be able to pick up where I left off, that I would be who I thought I was going to be and was going to live the life I thought I was going to live, and my mind, my body and everything in between had totally changed. There were days when I would wake up feeling like I could conquer the world, and days when I had no ability to even get out of bed. There were days when I would question why I was here, and days when the world felt so incredibly heavy that I didn't want to be here, and I didn't know why I survived, because I actually didn't know if I wanted to be here. And it's such a complex moment that the thoughts and feelings just powered each other out. It was the weirdest thing ever. Moments where I thought I was back in the hospital with the alarms and the monitors and the constant feeling of, who am I? Am I going to die? What happens if I can't do it this time? Comes the added burden of living with a new diagnosis. You go from being completely normal to having to adjust to this whole new way of life. I remember looking at blood sugar monitors and needles going, how am I supposed to do this for the rest of my life? And how is that okay? And that the fear of this new condition and this new life would define who I was. And in actual fact, it never did. It was a world that felt completely suffocating and completely scary, but a world that if I didn't go through it, I wouldn't be who I am now. And I wouldn't have met Nat and Josh. I met Josh when I was lying on intensive care, and a friend shared Josh's YouTube video on her Instagram story. And I followed him, and we just messaged every single day, all night, all day. And it was so nice to have someone who knew what I was feeling, who knew the weight of the diagnosis, who knew what and how it would feel on your shoulders. And it allowed me to realise that yes, my life had become so fragile, and I was becoming this person who was like a really thin piece of glass that could shatter at any moment. Speaking to Josh allowed me to realise that life didn't have to go that way. You know, I could live with it, and I could work with it, and I could understand it more and more. Josh has this incredible gift of humour and never taking anything too seriously that allowed me to realise that, yeah, you have to deal with it, because if I don't, I'm going to die. But would I rather die doing something I love and living a life that is so worth living? Because I am not going to be remembered for my medical condition or the blood sugar that I had or the amount of hospital stays or the amount of times I survived. No one is going to remember me for that. Everyone is going to remember me for the kindness and who I was and everything I did with my life. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. It's 2022, where we were filming Make Me Prime Minister. Nat and I filmed Make Me Prime Minister together, and we were in the green room. This is how we met. Setting the stage. We're in the green room. Nat was getting a drink. I was talking to Adam. We love Adam. We're on the sofa. Never met Nat before because she had to quarantine, because we'd already done our quarantine. She was late. Backstory. And I see Nat's sensor on her arm. It's here. And I was like, oh my God, you're type 1. And she was like, oh my God, I am. Are you? And I was like, oh my God, yes. From that moment, we became the dynamic duo. We laughed together. We cried together. We spoke to each other's parents. We spent most of the time in each other's apartments. We shared hypo treatments together. We had highs together. We had snack bags together. We did everything together, and I don't think I say it enough. Nat wholeheartedly taught me to live fully, to embrace everything, and to enjoy my life with a sidekick of insulin, you know, and a sidekick of surviving. But she taught me to do those things, and I'm just gonna plug Nat for a bit, because Nat actually has a Type 1 podcast, and it's called Typecast, and it's with Omnipod, and I'm basically the biggest fan. And I'm so proud of everything she does, because it really shows that life is so worth living. You listen to people's stories and how they were diagnosed, and you laugh with these episodes, you cry with them, and it really shows that there is life after everything. There is life after a world of fear, and there is life after a world of, I really hate when people call it a journey, but it is. It's like a chapter of your book. It's like your book 1 of Harry Potter and your chapter 4 in, J.K. Rowling wrote so many books and so many chapters. It's a chapter of your book. It's not the whole story. And Nat really taught me that. She taught me that in a very grounded way, with no judgment, with harsh, honest truth, that life was worth living, but I still had to deal with my condition. And I remember her saying, you don't have to know everything right now, but you just have to take it one step at a time, and it's okay not to have it all figured out. And that is something that no one tells you, that you don't have to have it all figured out right now, and that is perfectly okay. We live in a world where we are constantly struck with, yeah, but someone else your age is doing this, or someone else is buying a house, or this, that and the other, and you begin to feel so far behind, and then all of a sudden you realise you're not, because we're on totally different paths, and we all have totally different end destinations, but we're all going to die the same. No one in this world makes it out alive, and some of us survive more than others, but we're all survivors in our own right. Said Josh has this incredible gift of humour. There were moments when I was consumed with fear, anxiety, panic, and Josh would tell me that my blood sugar and my number doesn't define me. I am a human being, not a number. And sometimes it's the little things that we have to remember. You are not your diagnosis. A diagnosis is a part of you. You are not a survivor. It is a part of you. You are not that one thing. You are so many more things. Well, that was a bit dramatic. You are so many more things than just a survivor or just a type 1. You are someone who has done so many things with their life and has so many more things to do, and that is so exciting. And Josh, it made me feel like I was human again. I wasn't just a diagnosis. I wasn't defined by my diagnosis. I was a person with thoughts and feelings and emotion, and they helped me see that survival doesn't always mean fear, and that fear isn't a weakness, it is a strength, and it is a part of the process. They also showed me that fear doesn't control my life, and it doesn't have to control your life. If you are listening to this and you feel like you are stuck between and you are drowning in confusion and fear, I want you to know that you're not alone. We've all been there. It's okay not to have everything figured out, and it's okay to be afraid and anxious and scared and confused and angry. But remember that you don't have to carry these feelings alone. There is a whole world of people out there who have been through it, who are going through it, who have it to come, who know someone who's been through it. There is so much and so many people and resources out there that want to help. So find your people, find your community, and it is something that I want to create here, is a community where there is no judgment. There is always a story to tell, where people feel welcome and comfortable, and my messages are always open. What Nat and Josh taught me wasn't just how to cope, it was how to live and how to move forwards one step at a time, to understand my strength and my survival and my story, and how to find the strength within that. There was a particular time when I was in hospital and surprise, and I was in full panic and I was really scared, and I was like, oh my god, what happens if I die this time? What happens if I don't make it out alive? Josh was like, you've survived worse than this. Like, Josh put it as bluntly as possible, and he was like, you have survived worse than this. You are not as sick as you have been. It was like, therefore you've survived your hardest of days. Therefore you're going to survive this as well. You are still standing, and that is something so worth celebrating. It one step at a time. If it means you take one step forwards and 3 steps back until you are confident enough to take the next step, then so be it. Healing isn't linear, and everyone does it differently, and everyone does it in a very different way. It's okay to take your time. In those moments, all we need is someone to tell us that it's going to be okay, to hold our hand and to say, it's all going to work out. Not you're going to be fine, because no one wants to hear that, but it's going to be okay. A reminder helped me see that I wasn't stuck with fear. I could take small steps, and those steps would lead me forwards. It wasn't about overcoming everything at once. It was about overcoming one thing at a time, moving through it one step at a time. I'm going to share a couple of tricks. This is not medical advice, please don't seek it as medical advice, but it is some advice. Find your people, find your community. It's what we have here. It's what there are so many communities. Don't be afraid to reach out to other people. There are people in this world who are going through or who have been through what you are going through. And the worst thing is when you feel like you are the only person in the world, and then all of a sudden you realise you're not, and there are so many other people who know exactly how you feel and have been there and aren't scared anymore. Don't be afraid to find your people and ask for help. You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to do it on your own. Celebrate the small wins. You know, there were days when I couldn't get out of bed, and there were days when I felt like I could conquer the world. In those moments, I decided that if I could get out of my bed and walk to my sink and brush my teeth, what a privilege it was to have 2 legs and 2 arms that worked and a beating heart. That in itself is a win. It's quite a big win actually, but it is a win. You know, when I would make a coffee or I would go out with my friends, celebrate everything, because everything is worth celebrating. You are here, and you're here for a reason, and you're alive, and that is a victory in itself. The last one, and I think in this world we all need to do it. We all need to be kinder to ourselves. Be kinder to who you are, because you're not broken. You're just healing, and healing isn't linear, and it's different for everyone. And healing takes a huge amount of time, and as my mum would say, you had to learn to unpack the suitcase, to repack the suitcase, to close it and put it under the bed. And you just have to be kind to yourself. You're here and you're living, and what a privilege that is. Even though you have been through the unthinkable, what a privilege it is to be here and to be alive and to see the sunrise in the morning. Surviving isn't just about getting through the physical challenges, it's about learning to live with the emotional weight, the survivor's guilt, the trauma, and realising that you are not broken because of it. I'm here today because obviously doctors and nurses, we love them, but of people like Josh and Nat and the communities that we have found within ourselves and within other people who help me understand that fear is a part of the journey. It isn't the journey, and it's not the final destination. but it also doesn't have to define who I am. If you are struggling, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You do not have to do this alone. There is a whole world out there of people who are rooting for you and who are backing your corner and who have a seat at the table for you. A whole world of people who get it, who understand it, and who understand the weight you carry. Reaching out to them can make all the difference. Thank you for joining me today. Next week we will talk about how to redefine normal and how to redefine life and your new normal while still honouring the old one, the good, the bad, the ugly. Meantime, I would love to hear from you. Who has helped you? Communities you love, your story. You can send us a message at Life After Surviving. You can send us an email at lifeaftersurviving@gmail.com, and you can follow us here and on social media and Spotify and help this podcast get to everyone who needs it. Because I will always say, I needed something like this after I came out of hospital. I needed someone to remind me there is a life that I am so worthy of living after surviving. And I'm going to leave you with one final thing. You are here, and that is a victory in itself worth celebrating.